Welcome to the 10th annual 3-minute thesis or 3MT final round competition. We're excited to have you. We are welcoming folks both in person and on YouTube today. So I'm Stephen Roth, Dean of the Graduate School. It's my pleasure to be part of this event today. I want to thank Robin Kotzker and the staff of the Graduate School for organizing today's event. I want to thank our 5 judges, faculty from across the campus who are volunteering their time today, and our MC, Marcia Gunzler-Stevens, who is the director of the Stamp Student Union. So we're thankful to everyone involved in the event. Before I turn it over to Marcia and our excellent student presenters, I do want to emphasize just how important this event is for our campus. So we are a premier land-grant university in the country. And if you are not familiar with that term, land grant, well, you have some homework for when you finish up today. Look that up. So a land grant institution has a requirement to contribute to society, and in particular, give back to our community. One of the most important ways that we give back to our community is by telling them about what we're doing on this campus, right? Explaining our research, our scholarship, our creative activities. We can't do that by sharing our academic papers, our conference proceedings, right? That is just too deep. It's too complicated. And so what do we need to do? We need to learn how to share our findings, our innovations in ways that the general public can understand. That isn't easy to do, but it's critically important. And that's why this 3MT competition is so important, right? Students are learning how to take the complex and important work that they're doing and present it in ways that are relatable and understandable to the broader public. It's a critically important skill. And so I want to congratulate all of the students here today who won their college competitions, but thank the students who participated broadly in 3MT because they understand this responsibility of giving back to our communities and accepting the challenge of learning this skill of understanding, communicating our scholarship out to the broader community. So thank you for that. It's a skill that I wish all of our students and all of our faculty had and practiced. So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Marcia Gunzler-Stevens, and I look forward to hearing some excellent presentations. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. This is not my first rodeo doing the 3-minute thesis, and I love this event. I just left my office upstairs and I said, look at me now imagine me in 2 hours when I'm even more brilliant. And truly, what you all teach us in the next couple of hours will be the fodder of our conversation with other people for the next few months. So thank you for making us wiser and more aware and motivated to do something or think something. So thank you so much for all being here and participating as audience members, as supporters, or as presenters most particularly. So this is a well-oiled machine, thanks to Robin. And we've got time limits, right, 3 minutes. So I'm going to introduce you ever so quickly to our judges who are in the back with a really fancy panelist table. And I'll ask them to give the wave. These are the judges who you're presenting to, but really we're your judges too. So we love learning from you. Here, you know, like when you write it phonetically, you screw it up. Kuya Asawuku is the Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the A. James Clark School of Engineering, and she's also a professor in chemical and biomolecular engineering. Now, this is what makes her like a true icon. She is a former campus 3-minute thesis winner, went on to the international competition. Lecture in Biological Sciences program. He teaches microbiology, the big questions of microbiology, and is involved in pedagogical research, which is terrific. Jesse Klein is here, is a lecturer in the College of Information Studies and director of the Masters of Professional Studies on Game, Entertainment, and Media Analytics. That sounds pretty darn cool, too. She teaches a course on data visualization, and some of you may be thinking about that as we speak. Trevor Perry-Giles is professor and Department of Communication Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Research in the College of Arts and Humanities. And also just an amazing person because I know we have some folks here from your college as well. And Joe Sullivan is a professor in the Department of Plant Sciences and Landscape Architecture, Associate Dean for Academic Programs, and Faculty Affairs in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. So we are terrifically pleased to have our group of judges. And you talk to the rest of us, they'll pick up on all of that. And then here's what you need to know about what's cool about that. These judges will select 6 winners today. Each of those winners will receive a $1,000 award. When you're a grad student, that's good money. And the professional production of your 3-minute thesis, which will make you ever so popular on cable TV. Winners will be announced on Friday, April 19th, so not very long from now. This program is being live streamed, and so for those of you who have friends and family that are at a distance, that could be a great way for them to participate, and so text them quickly. And then for people in the room today, there are a few hard copies of the 3-minute thesis program on several chairs throughout the building, and if you're like me and you need a hard piece of paper, there are a few in the room today. And if at any point in time you want a beverage, look back there, there's coffee and all the rest of it. And we'll take a halftime break, and there won't be a marching band or anything like that, but there'll be ice cream. So, and coffee and hot beverages, so thanks so much for that. The other piece that I would say is the 3-minute thesis website is it the following, just memorize this, gradschool.umd.edu/3mt. Just remember, get to the /3mt. And it's also listed on the bottom of those programs that are floating out there. And there's a YouTube link and all the rest of it, so that if in fact you don't get this out to the folks that love you, you can do it after the fact, because they'll be recorded. Now, here's how this whole thing got started. 3MT was really a good Australian invention in Queensland. They were having a horrible drought. Everybody was required, coerced, to take 3-minute showers, right? And you kept a timer, and you're like, done! And so there was, as always, the dean of the Queensland, University of Queensland grad school was sort of taking that shower and thought, wait a second, what if I could get grad students to do their whole dissertation or thesis in 3 minutes? Hence it began, invention from drought. 3-minute slide presentations, you have one static slide for each presentation behind you. That was a rule of the University of Queensland when they started in 2008. The other 3MT rules are pretty simple. No poems, no raps, no props, no costumes. Sorry to disappoint you. And then the University of Maryland is one of 29 research institutions that are members of Universitas 21, U21. They host this 3MT video competition. We've had folks participating since 2014, and in 2014 and 2017, our nominees won Judge's first place prize and the People's Choice Award. So you're following on a rich legacy. And you can view all those videos on that same site I told you, /3MT. So, are you ready? You will not see any dancing here, but you will be enlightened. Our first presenter is in applied economics, Diego Silva. Will be talking to us today about fueling innovation, effects of patent policies on immigration. And we are so glad to have you here, Diego. Thanks so much for leading off. And the X mark on the floor is yours.
Check. For about 2 centuries, the US has been the largest economy in the world. But have you ever wondered what made America successful for so long? Well, part of the secret lies in our long-standing support for inventors, regardless of their birthplace. Now, many inventions have happened through these patent policies that we have done throughout the time. Now, let's think about these inventions. Modern-day electricity, suspension bridges, even Google search. All of these are inventions made by immigrants. The thing is that we not only support inventions, but we invite them to happen here. But as great as the invention system in America has been, some things can still be improved. How can we make American inventions better? My research answers this question using two parts of the invention process: the high skill demand for labor and the patent filing system. Today, most patents are produced by private firms, and the government facilitates high-skilled foreign labor through a working visa program, the H-1B visas. Research shows that H-1B workers significantly increase the volume of patents produced by hiring firms. But if firms only produce patents when it's evidently profitable, how can policymakers incentivize them to produce more? Well, there are two ways of doing this. One way is by producing faster patenting, and the other way is by giving more secure rights of patents to inventors. The thing is that there is a trade-off between the two. Faster patenting often implies less secure provisions. And what is the optimal balance between these? And importantly, how does it affect the demand for high-skilled immigrant workers? My research seeks to answer this question using the American Index Act of 2011, a major patenting reform that actually affected many other things that didn't expect it to be affected. This policy was implemented with the idea of making more secure patents, especially for small firms. But actually it had unintended effects. I analyzed how the H-1B visa data, alongside firm characteristics data, such as the number of employees and profitability of firms, can actually move around the hiring patterns of those different firms, smaller and bigger. Now, you really may think that this was a good thing. Smaller firms get more patent securities, they produce more. But my research shows that it had the opposite effect for all firms, especially for small firms, which were the most affected ones. Now, something very important about this effect is that smaller firms are at the center of patenting at this moment. We're thinking about startups. But if we look deeper into these issues, one of the main things that we will realize is that, well, if we are making this balance, we are meant to really select the patents that make the most sense. Now, since this is showing that smaller firms were the most affected, how can we actually balance this thing better? My research answered this and disambiguates better these effects. We can see that about 7% of H-1B applications reduced after this patent policy took effect. We can analyze this by looking at the hiring patterns right before and right after the policy took effect in 2011. Now, this research is crucial to inform policymakers about the actual effects of patent policies that they implement, the indirect effects that they are not thinking about. And very importantly, it can tell us which patent policies can lead us to a better future. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're smarter now, aren't you? Thanks to Diego. I'm shutting this door so that no one gets interrupted. Whoa, I'm shutting it with gusto. Thank you so much, Diego, for both bravely walking out there and setting a fabulous tone for all of our presentations. Sporting the whole of the chemical and biomolecular engineering department behind him, Robert Morris is our next presenter. And Robert is going to talk to us about preventing adhesions, the medical complications you've never heard of. Oh, this is the stuff for dinner table conversation. Bring it on, Robert.
Imagine that you're a patient undergoing an appendectomy at the hospital. You're nervous, as anyone would be in your situation, but you wake up after your procedure and you're told everything went well and you can return home to life as normal. A few days later, you're headed towards the gym for your daily workout, and as you're stretching, a sudden pain strikes you right where you had your surgery. You've just become a victim to a medical complication you've likely never even heard of, known as abdominal adhesions. Abdominal adhesions are unwanted bridges of tissue that form between two different surfaces inside of your body. They're primarily composed of proteins and shockingly occur in 90% of all surgeries. Their formation leads to several life-threatening issues, including internal bleeding, bowel obstruction, and organ dysfunction, which is fatal in 13% of onset cases. All in all, this accounts for approximately $3 billion a year in medical costs all across the globe. But how come none of you have ever heard of them? Well, in essence, scientists like me do not understand how they are formed. We know that they are caused by tissue injury, but we do not know how to use drugs to prevent them. As such, we hypothesize that rather than a drug, a physical barrier that blocks your body surfaces from contacting is the optimal way to tackle this issue. My research focuses on designing a material for this exact purpose. Now, what makes this material special? Well, for one, it's able to be sprayed directly by a surgeon in the operating room quickly and efficiently, resulting in what look like long spider webs for visual acuity. However, we like to say they look like the spider webs you see on everyone's lawn during Halloween time, and then we joke the surgeons are now Spider-Man, meaning they're not just real-life superheroes, they're now comic book superheroes too. The second important property of this material are the components that it's made of. Now, each of these components has a unique property. One of them is very good at sticking to the tissue inside of your body, effectively making it a glue between your tissue and the rest of the material. Now, the rest of the material is where it gets interesting. The second half of this material is made of molecules that are very good at attaching to water. Now, we hypothesize that if water molecules encompass the entire material, proteins in the environment will be unable to approach and bind to the surface as the space is already occupied. Now, in testing our material thus far, we have shown that it is 12 times stronger than the leading clinical product on the market today. And we have also shown it stops protein from sticking to the surface by up to 92%. That's a good part already, but there's one more challenge I've neglected to mention so far. Adhesions do not form immediately. They form over a 7 to 10 day timescale, so our material must also survive that. We have shown from studying how it breaks down, it is capable of surviving over 14 days inside of the body, surpassing this window. All that's left now is to continue optimization for use in animal studies to show that this is the future of adhesions prevention. Ultimately, this is only the beginning, but adhesions are a problem that must be tackled now. Millions of people every single year suffer from their complications, and current products are simply too inept to handle them. Only with a better understanding and some clever engineering intuition on our part can we hope to tackle the adhesions problem and ensure a better and healthier future for us all. Thank you.
Is anyone anticipating surgery in the next little bit of time and you're thinking, oh, Robert, work faster, work faster. How amazing, how amazing. Well, you were in the Robert section of our program. From the Department of Entomology, we are really grateful to have Robert Salerno with us. And what Robert's going to speak about today is Beneath Our Feet, Cultivating Resilience with Agriculture's Hidden Heroes. Adhesions to Heroes. I can see the title.
In the realm of agricultural innovation, we are faced with a pressing reality. Our current cropping systems, which are characterized by the application of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, increased soil erosion, and destroying habitats, have taken a toll on both biodiversity and the environment, signaling a need for transformative action. Today, approximately 25% of all described species on Earth are soil arthropods, and these organisms perform many essential ecosystem services, such as decomposition, which catalyzes the nutrient cycle, bioturbation, which is the mixing of our soils, and biological control, or pest predation. Without these organisms, we would not be able to sustain our agricultural systems, and today we are losing their function, mainly due to the actions that I mentioned previously. To combat these issues in livestock farming and forage cropping, scientists have suggested to implement diverse perennial vegetation and create systems with complete circularity, meaning that livestock and plant residues are recycled back with no external inputs. There are many known benefits to an agricultural transformation towards diverse perennial circular systems. However, we are unsure how these systems will influence soil arthropod biodiversity on the farm. So, to begin to answer this question, I investigated how soil arthropod community composition and 4 land use types on a farm influenced soil arthropod community composition, including fallow fields, forests, forest edges, and agricultural drainage ditches. Each of these areas possess different levels of plant diversity and have experienced differing management practices in the past. Compared between the 4 habitats, I found significant differences in soil arthropod community composition, suggesting that soil arthropods are influenced by land use type, where areas that have experienced more disturbance in the past, such as increased exposure to herbicides and pesticides and increased mowing frequency, had lower abundances of soil arthropods. This research also suggests that soil arthropods may be influenced by the agricultural systems we are using today. So, throughout the next field season, I will be investigating the trends of soil arthropod biodiversity in our agricultural systems. I will be comparing soil arthropod community composition between diverse perennial circular systems like pastures and grasslands and conventional corn monoculture systems. Here, I expect to find higher soil arthropod abundances and higher soil arthropod biodiversity in the diverse perennial circular systems like grasslands and pastures compared to the conventional corn silage systems due to beneficial management practices. Actionable science is important, and these systems are not new, providing assurance that they do work and we can make a change throughout the agricultural landscape, improving human health and environmental awareness at the same time. Thank you.
Robert, I have a 90-year-old friend who's still farming. And I am going to be writing a really good and informed card because he happens to be an organic dairy farmer. So
Awesome.
I got in that field. So thank you so very much. What I love so far is we've spanned a variety of learning environments, right? And this is only the beginning. And our judges are back there scratching their heads thinking, how are we going to do this? Even past 3MT champions are wondering the same. Our next presenter comes to us from mechanical engineering. And Het Mevada is really cool in total because today Het is going to talk to us about the coolest metal talked about by Het.
Imagine that you are in your home, your office, or right now. One thing might be common for you everywhere you go is your comfort. A thermal comfort in terms of surrounding temperature and humidity. And this comfort is provided by HVAC system, or more commonly known as air conditioning system. And I remember discussing this with my mom, and I said to her that I'm working on replacing this current HVAC technology. And she asked me the simple question, like you might have it, what is wrong with the current HVAC technology? Where me being very dramatic said to her that the current HVAC technology is kind of a double agent. You see, it provides us the thermal comfort, but at the same time also leads to global warming, which in turn leads to more increased demand of cooling and heating. And this is because everything that has to do with HVAC currently is done by chemical refrigerants called hydrofluorocarbon or HFCs. And these HFCs has global warming impact of 50 to 5,000 times to that of carbon dioxide. And as a result, HVAC accounts for 11% of the total carbon emissions. And this is not the worst part. The rise in HVAC is still going on in USA and even so more intense in developing nations like India and China. And hence I am working on developing a cooling device which uses solid metals as refrigerants, which has zero global warming impact. Yes, you heard it right, it has zero global warming impact. And this cooling technology is called elastocaloric cooling. And the metals used in these cooling technologies are called shape memory alloys. These shape memory alloys have an amazing property and they surprise us every time because when you load them, its temperature increases and it releases heat to the surrounding. And when you unload, it cools down below the surrounding temperature. And this happens because you transform the material from one crystalline structure to another. Recently, we have developed an elastocaloric device with the highest cooling power reported worldwide. And in this cooling device, as you can see, we have used nickel titanium tubes as refrigerants. And these tubes are compressed and released. And after each of these steps, we flow the water to extract the energy and generate the required cooling effect. After demonstrating an elastocaloric device with sufficient capacity, we can begin to think about real-life application. And my research specifically focuses on using different refrigerants, such as copper-based refrigerants rather than nickel titanium, because copper-based refrigerants has an order of magnitude work less required compared to nickel titanium. Additionally, I'm also working on increasing the frequency of these systems, meaning how fast each cycle is processed here. because as we increase the frequency, the cooling power that we get also proportionally increases, and hence we can get more cooling effect. Based on these two research paths, our studies has shown, apart from getting zero global warming impact, elastocaloric cooling also has a potential of energy saving of 10% compared to the current HVAC system. And in conclusion, my overall goal is to make sure that in the future, energy and global warming becomes two of our least significant concerns. Thank you.
And if you find the answer to global warming, we are going to put you on the front of the alumni magazine. It'll be the cover story. Before our next presenter comes up, and to give our judges just a minute, do me a quick favor. There's nothing like being in a group of scholars. So I want you to just go sideways or up and behind you and just introduce yourself to one person you don't know right now. You've got exactly 30 seconds to make that happen. Think about talking about your research in 3 minutes. To look out and see a friendly face, especially one as cool as you. So that is really cool. Our next presenter, Tytrice Faison, comes from Geology. And Tytrice is going to talk about UMD, Unravel Meteoric Dating. We're not quite sure where this is going, but we're with you.
Have you ever looked up and seen a streak across the night sky? Well, that object may become a meteorite, and though they are usually depicted as mysterious rocks from outer space, meteorites are time capsules which allow us to peer into the birth of our solar system. There are many types of meteorites, but today we will talk about ordinary chondrites, which are special because they have remained relatively unaltered since their formation billions of years ago at the beginning of the solar system. This means that they can be studied to understand early solar system events, which have been lost by constant geologic activity on Earth. A vital tool in unearthing this history is the use of radiometric dating to determine the age of the meteorite. Take, for example, the elements hafnium and tungsten. Hafnium decays to tungsten with clock-like regularity, so we can measure the amount of tungsten atoms and use that to calculate the amount of time the meteorite took to form. Hafnium prefers to stay in rock, while the daughter atom, tungsten, prefers to be in metal. Ordinary chondrites are made of both rock and metal, so they are ideal candidates for hafnium-tungsten dating, and this has been used to date many early solar system events, such as the segregation of Earth's core and even the impact which formed the moon. So, many studies have used ordinary chondrites to provide insight into the early solar system. However, these studies often average large numbers of metal grains regardless of size or composition. Now, this is problematic because each metal grain has a unique history and origin which is reflected in its chemistry. Now, why does this matter? Well, this means that using the current methodology, we are losing vital information when dating meteorites, and as a result, calculated ages are being skewed depending on the type of grain analyzed. A study in 2019 measured an age variation of 8 million years for one meteorite. For context, Mars is estimated to have gathered most of its mass within the first 5 million years of the solar system, so a lot can happen in 8. My research will constrain this by analyzing the distribution of atoms along with the unique properties of each metal grain. So far, I have taken over 150 measurements across 9 ordinary chondrites using an ultraviolet laser to blast into each metal grain and measure the elements within. Each meteorite has a unique formation history, but even within the same meteorite, different metal grains display different elemental behaviors which reflect the events that shape them. This can leave a large impact on how the age of each of these samples is calculated, as some grains will tend to contain more atoms than others. This grain-to-grain variation is likely the culprit behind age variations such as the 8 million year difference that I mentioned before. With the continuation of my research, I will be able to calculate meteoritic ages with respect to the unique properties of metal grains. Thus, we will achieve a better understanding of how elemental behavior affects radiometric dating. Meteorites are the key to unlocking the origins of our home in the solar system. It's important that we have a full understanding of their unique histories so that we can understand our own origins in turn. Thank you.
That moment when it was 8 million, didn't you feel younger? Like I was like, oh my God, I am not 8 million. Such great stuff. And the fact that UMD appears in the title. It's a double good thing. We are so grateful. This part of the competition is master's pre-candidacy, right? It might be somebody who's pursuing a doctorate, but this is right before you get to that candidacy. The second half of our program will be those who are just a little further along on that journey. They're 8 million older. They feel like it. Don't forget, halftime's fast approaching. There will be ice cream and beverages for you as well. Anmol Kajila is our next presenter, coming to us from plant sciences. I know there's probably folks in the back that are proud of plant sciences. The topic today is future-ready wheat, defying climate challenges. There seems to be a little bit of a theme here about climate change. Thank you so much.
Science isn't just about discoveries. It's about giving hope to the hungry and opportunity to the poor. These words are not merely a quote, but a reality of many families like mine. My grandfather, a farmer in India in 1960s, was struggling to make ends meet when Green Revolution came as a ray of hope, a revolution that increased the food production and reduced poverty. All this was possible because of certain wheat and rice, which had the ability to be shot and still produce more number of grains. But wait, what if I tell you that if I grow the same short wheat today, it might not even emerge out of the soil, let alone having a good produce? Do you know why would that happen? Global warming. Increasing temperatures, decreasing groundwater levels, and drying soils. Let me explain. Green Revolution wheat was short in height because it was not responsive to a plant hormone called gibberellic acid, or GA. In other terms, in humans, we have hormones that help in increasing our height during puberty. But if we are not responsive to those hormones, we remain short. Similarly, if wheat is not responsive to GA, it becomes dwarf. In this scenario, the nutrients, which otherwise would have gone to increase the height of the plant, are now going to the grains, hence producing more number of grains. But this process has a negative too. When we sow a seed, it has to come out of the soil to reach the sunlight for its further growth. But if that seed is not responsive to GA, it might fail to do so. Such seeds will do good only if there is enough moisture in the soil. But in warm and dry climates, And that is going to be the reality of a not so distant future due to global warming. This is where my research comes in. I'm trying to develop a wheat which is short in height but is also GA responsive. For that, I selected some seeds of a wheat which was tall and was not GA responsive. I introduced some mutation in its DNA, a process called mutagenesis, and grew those seeds in the greenhouse. Upon maturity, I found that some of those plants were short in height. I selected those short plants and tested whether they are responsive to GA or not, and 20% of them were responsive. Now I'm trying to identify what was that genetic change that caused a tall and non-GA responsive plant to become short and GA responsive. Once I'm able to identify that gene, I'm going to clone it and introduce it into other wheat cultivars through breeding. In a world like ours, it is really hard to imagine life without wheat, which is the staple of more than 35% of global population. With this future-ready wheat that can defy climate challenges, we are bringing a new revolution, Green Revolution 2.0. And this time, it comes with the hope of bringing food security for the ever-growing population and defying the climate challenges. Thank you.
I think that Grandpa from 1916 would be really proud of where you're going, and how grateful that we all think about food, and particularly in the global food. Our next presenter, Anirudh and Nakra, is coming to us from electrical and computer engineering, and we are so grateful to have you here. And the topic for Anirudh today is seeing invisible microplastics by quantum-guided data science. Thanks so much for presenting.
How many of you drank water the first thing in the morning? Did you eat fruits or oats before heading to work? Maybe you grabbed a salad or some protein bars for lunch. Now what if I told you making those seemingly healthy choices is actually negatively affecting you? Even though you might be making the best choices when it comes to what you put in your body, there are millions of tiny particles of death inside you right at this moment. These particles are creeping slowly throughout your body, damaging organs and causing developmental and immune disorders. Now what if I told you that you can do absolutely nothing at an individual level to combat this issue? In fact, most of us are quite familiar with these tiny particles of death. We use them in our phones, at hospitals for life-saving equipment, and even in many of the clothes that we're wearing right now. Yes, these tiny particles of death are plastics. Rather, plastic particles so small that they're sometimes even unseeable through a microscope's lens. These are called microplastics. It might come as a surprise to you that each one of us in this room has accumulated over 1 credit card worth of microplastics in this past week only, and that we don't really have any concrete solution to this problem. Existing methods of uncovering the type and amount of microplastics requires weeks worth of effort from expert scientists and chemists, and even after all this, the results remain inconclusive due to the destructive underlying chemical processes. By combining the abstract quantum world with strong and principled signal processing algorithms, my research aims to provide a new perspective to this problem. Particularly, our collaborators in quantum engineering find that when a laser is shown upon a quantum material with special properties, it gives rise to interesting signals. My research focuses on crafting mathematical methods that can analyze these interesting signals in a way that leverages the underlying sensing mechanism, which is the interactions between the negatively charged particles of the microplastics with the positively charged particles of this quantum material. Using this, we're able to create state-of-the-art sensors that can detect, identify, and quantify the amount of microplastics while not damaging the underlying sample and reducing the sample processing time to mere hours instead of the weeks it used to be. Additionally, we're able to add explanation methods on top of our algorithms to understand that our systems learn in a way which is very similar to how an expert would solve this problem, but we're also able to find preliminary evidence of a new type of particle interaction that can help guide scientific discovery in the quantum world. Given that we have now demonstrated the feasibility of such a sensor, we're trying to understand how variations in nature would affect it. Advancements in these ideas are a critical step forward in unveiling and defeating these microscopic monsters and will hopefully lead to an era where your health is truly in your hands. Thank you.
Okay, you had me at particles of death. It made you think, what did I eat today, and did it contain particles of death? And Anirudh is going to save us if we can just researching. Holy cow! It is interesting, though. Doesn't it make you think about that, protein bar you ate a little bit ago, and whether there were any particles of death inside? Thanks so much, Anirudh. Our next speaker, coming to us from nutrition and food science, after I've talked about particles of death, going to tell us something else about what we already ate today. Ogedengbe is from Nigeria. And what I love about the research that she's doing is that it is about can vegetables prevent obesity in the presence and absence of bacteria. And boy, boy, do we need to know this to retort the particles of death.
What is obesity? And why the research in obesity? Obesity is an epidemic crisis that is associated with excessive accumulation of fats in the body. Do you know that obesity is associated with chronic conditions in the United States? According to the Center for Disease Control, more than 1 in 5 children and more than 1 in 3 adults struggle with obesity. The risk factor for these increasing obesity incidents include unhealthy food choices due to the frequent consumption of junks and sodas, physical inactivity, family history, and intake of medications such as antibiotics that kills beneficial bacteria. And those beneficial bacteria prevent obesity by breaking the nutrients and excess energy. Hence, my research focuses on ways to prevent obesity by using diets. In this case, stinging nettle vegetable. You might wonder, why nettle plants? This is because previous studies have shown that these extracts from these plants are responsible for numerous health-promoting benefits by preventing diabetes, inflammation, and allergy. However, the mechanism is unclear. Therefore, my interest is to determine if this whole vegetable would exert the same benefits as the extracts, and if yes, how? Amazingly, our findings showed that these whole vegetables do prevent obesity by increasing the population of intestinal bacteria. To better understand the effectiveness of these vegetables, I fed mice without bacteria in their intestine, which are the germ-free mice, and the regular mice with bacteria in their intestine, these vegetables, alongside a high-fat diet, just to mimic the Western diet for some time. The obtained tissues and blood from these animals were analyzed by gene expression and metabolomics. Interestingly, these vegetables, both in the presence and absence of intestinal bacteria, prevent obesity by decreasing body weight, reducing the amount of fat in the tissues, and increasing the activations of proteins responsible for fat breakdown. Hence, when you go to the nearest farmer's market, ensure to get a nettle plant. Thank you.
All right, did anyone else write down nettle plants on your Yeah, you're like, skip the protein bars, I'm writing down nettle plant. I've got to find things with nettle plant and not those particles of death. That was great, right? And does it make you think anew? All that bacteria in your gut that you want, that you're sort of killing off with those particles of death, you can bring back with the nettles, which is so great. All right, did anybody just join us? Anybody just join us? We're so glad you're here. Are you here to cheer on someone?
See, yes.
Woohoo! Woo! All right, you go ahead. You want loud cheers? You got for us. Fan club right here. 2. 3-minute thesis, 3-minute dissertation. We are so grateful to have had the scholars we had in that earlier group before halftime. And thank you all for eating up the ice cream so it doesn't sit back there melting. It is a joy to have everyone here, and we move into the second group, which is the post-candidacy folks. All that means is that they're just a little further down the road, and they've got perhaps more data, or they've got this brilliant idea that they've unearthed a little bit more, but oh my goodness, the brilliance in the first group makes it hard to believe that it's any different. We're so grateful to our judges who are sort of doing their tabulations as we speak, but I also learned during the break that it was an arduous journey just to get this far in your colleges and the like, and I heard there were big crowds among other places, probably engineering, because they were telling me in engineering it was like, whoa, God, it was like a whole lecture hall. So how brilliant you are to even be here today, and how grateful we are that you may be one of the recipients of that $1,000 gift. There's a new car too. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah, new car. So I'm going to start again, and we're going to meet some folks who are going to make us brilliant through their brilliance. And our first person that you'll meet momentarily will be Erin Hill. Erin's coming to us from counseling psychology, which is so terrific in the College of Education. And her topic today is grief and growth after an opioid-related death, a topic that is so critically important. Thank you so much.
For some, losing a loved one to an opioid-related death is an unthinkable nightmare. But for the loved ones of the victims of the opioid crisis in the United States, it's a reality. In 2021, opioids were involved in over 80,000 overdose deaths, leaving behind millions of family members, friends, and romantic partners to grieve these losses. Now, we know that opioid-related deaths are highly stigmatized, with many reporting blame from others regarding the death of their loved one. We also know that people bereaved by these losses are at higher risk for negative mental health outcomes compared to people bereaved by natural or accidental deaths. But why? Everyone's grief experience is unique and personal, but we don't know enough about what specifically contributes to somebody experiencing more positive or negative grief outcomes after an opioid-related death. This makes it difficult for psychologists to effectively intervene in a population that needs care. I wanted to address this problem. I looked at two outcomes: prolonged grief and post-traumatic growth. Prolonged grief is intense grief symptoms that last longer than typical grief reactions. Post-traumatic growth is positive change that happens as a result of a highly challenging life event. I also considered a few variables that might predict these outcomes. I looked at disenfranchised grief, which is the degree to which a loss is publicly acknowledged and mourned, social support, and coping style. I studied these variables in 159 people grieving the loss of a family member, friend, or romantic partner to an opioid-related cause. They filled out an online survey about their experiences and shared their story. And what I found surprised me. Coping style was the most important predictor of both prolonged grief and post-traumatic growth. Those who reported using more avoidant emotional coping, such as self-blame, were more likely to experience prolonged grief. In fact, prolonged grief disorder was very prevalent in the sample, with 40% meeting diagnostic criteria compared to an estimated 10% in a general grieving population. Conversely, those who reported using more active emotional coping, such as venting or positive reframing or problem-focused coping, which involves taking action, were more likely to experience post-traumatic growth. But what can we do with this information? We can do a lot. Psychologists may be able to facilitate post-traumatic growth in people bereaved by an opioid-related death by providing psychoeducation about active emotional and problem-focused coping. Additionally, psychologists can be proactive about screening for prolonged grief disorder, given the high prevalence in this sample. I'm hoping that these findings can empower psychologists and other helpers to improve outcomes for this traumatically bereaved and often overlooked population. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. I do think there's an NPR story in that when you think about what we learn every day about the opioid crisis. Thank you so much, and we are so grateful to you. Coming to us from physics, Nick Mennona is going to really enliven us with a hidden universe entitled Astrophysics, the Hidden Universe Inside of Your Mind. Thank you so much for being here, Nick.
Thank you very much. Astro and physics. When you hear these two words put together, you'd assume I'm going to talk about galaxies, black holes, or stars. But the stars I study are not in the sky, they're inside our minds. Astrocytes, meaning star-like brain cell, so called because normally they look like stars, create constellations inside our brains that have not been given the same amount of attention as those of neurons, brain cells with which you may be more familiar. The brain is not just neurons. It is a team of different cells, and astrocytes have been overlooked players. Researching astrocytes more in depth is our pathway to a more complete understanding of the brain. Now, physicists like myself are interested in interactions and how those interactions give rise to meaningful patterns over time. An intuitive way of thinking about interactions like a physicist is with car crashes. The ways in which a Ferrari experiences a car crash is going to vary depending upon if the other car is another Ferrari, a small smart car, or an 18-wheeler. Essentially, the car's shape gives rise to a different crash, a different interaction. Now, just like there's not just one type of car for a particular task, there is not just one type of astrocyte. I study immature, healthy, and injured astrocytes, which in fact all look different, using their different appearance as motivation to investigate how these different astrocytes interact. I was able to show that when immature astrocytes come together, we get an ordered pattern. When healthy astrocytes come together and interact, we get a mix of healthy and disordered. And when injured astrocytes come together, we get disorder. I study these patterns by taking data from a microscope which shows astrocytes lighting up. This is equivalent to a bunch of birds coming together, chirping at each other, conveying signals, information, in essence, communicating. Now, the reason why this is important and the patterns that I observed are important because on a fundamental level, the way the brain works is a bunch of different cells coming together, communicating, sending signals and patterns that allow the brain to function. So, not only have I observed and studied the patterns of overlooked brain cells, I have added comparative specificity in between the subtypes to describe how different astrocytes integrate into the communications of the whole galaxy of cells in the brain. We're certainly not done. There are non-neuronal cells other than astrocytes that have been overlooked in terms of their ability to generate signaling patterns. I'm convinced that if others look at those cells in the way that I have looked at astrocytes, we will be able to better map how all the cells in the brain, not just neurons, contribute. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
I'm giving my astrocytes a minute to signal each other. That was terrific. Thank you so much. Now, I know there's a #1 fan sitting right here. So if you present, face that. Faraz Burni is an amazing person in chemical and biomolecular engineering. And just to arrive here, according to the engineering folks, took a lot of effort. Self-adapting materials is the topic you're going to hear about from this person's favorite person.
Have you ever wondered the profound impact materials have on our daily lives, from the products we use to the environment we inhabit? Now picture a world where these materials can spontaneously change their properties. For instance, imagine a dining table that can adjust its size depending on the number of guests, or a car paint that can change color to match your mood. In my research, I strive to unlock this potential by inventing new materials with exceptional properties. Specifically, my focus is on soft materials, those with slimy or jelly-like consistency. We have engineered a number of smart and responsive materials. One such material can expand several thousand times the initial volume in response to a stimulus, such as pH, temperature, or light. But what if we want to alter the material properties without changing the stimulus, or simply applying the stimulus is not feasible? This is where my breakthrough comes in. I have developed a self-degrading gel by using small molecules. With just less than 1% of these small molecular gelators, self-assembly into nanofibers occur, transforming ordinary solvents into robust and resilient gels. But here's the twist. We incorporate a degrading agent in the initial formulation, allowing gels to transform from a solid to a liquid in a set time, which can be tuned from hours to days to even weeks. It is like giving materials a self-destruct button, but with a precision dial. So, why do we care? Imagine these gels as time-activated valves controlling the flow of substances. Now picture drug delivery systems that release therapeutic payloads with precise timings, or drilling application where gel degradation plays a key role. In fact, BP has licensed our technology, and they are using our material to make the drilling process more sustainable. How exactly it is used, we might wonder. When drilling an oil well, fractures in the rock formation are encountered, resulting in the loss of drilling fluid. This is where my material comes in. It is used to plug these fractures, preventing fluid loss. This not only mitigates the financial losses incurred by the company, but also safeguards the environment and the personnel working on the site. However, once the drilling operation is complete, the gel plug self-liquefies, facilitating oil extraction through the same fractures. Ultimately, our materials are changing the game. As we continue to push the boundaries of material science, we are paving the way for a more sustainable and efficient future for all. Thank you.
much. I wrote down self-destruct. That's my phrase that I won't forget from your presentation. But most particularly that BP's already using it. You're in grad school. How cool is that? And you got some applause from your number one. Cindy John is here next, representing her department, Criminology and Criminal Justice. This is an important topic, the effects of neighborhoods and summer jobs on youth crime. And we are so grateful you're researching it. Thanks so much, Sydney.
Thank you. If we ask people what their concerns are for youth in the nation, what often ends up at the top of the list are jobs and crime. Summer Jobs Program is one way to reduce arrest and conviction for program participants. In New York City, runs the largest summer youth employment program, or SYEP for short, in the nation. This program matches 14 to 24-year-olds to government-subsidized jobs where they work around 25 hours per week. Now, why would these programs work? Well, criminology has some theories to explain that. One of these theories is that youth who are working have less time and energy to commit crime, and being in a workplace prevents them from getting into risky situations. One thing that we don't know yet is how the neighborhood a youth lives in impacts how successful SYEP is in terms of reducing arrest. My research aims to understand how characteristics of youth's neighborhood, specifically socioeconomic disadvantage, can affect program outcomes. Because disadvantaged neighborhoods, for example, have fewer opportunities to keep youth busy and engaged over the summer compared to more affluent neighborhoods. And the absence of these enriching opportunities can increase youth crime. So I looked at data including home location, criminal justice record, and neighborhood disadvantage on all youth who applied to the New York City SYEP between 2005 and 2008. Because the program randomly selected youth to participate, I compared youth who participated in the program to those who were not selected. Now, using statistical modeling techniques, I find that the New York City SYEP program is significantly more effective in reducing arrest for participants living in disadvantaged neighborhoods. And in the most disadvantaged neighborhoods, program participants were 37% less likely to get arrested compared to non-participants. This finding is important because this suggests that place matters, and it sheds light on who benefits the most from a jobs program that's available in almost every large US city. This is helpful to identify potential target population for future policy, and it can inform policymakers on where to direct limited government funds for the most crime reduction benefits. Now, if I ask you, what's a promising program to target jobs and youth crime? I hope what ends up at the top of your list is SYEP. Thank you.
37% is a big number. Yeah. That's a big number. All right, let's just say it's a bigger number. This is just a slight commercial here than the number of students who responded to the belonging/climate survey on campus. So I'm going to just tell you, if you have a chance to do that, it closes next Friday. They don't lead with this, but you find it out at the end of the survey. If you get selected because you have completed it, you could be naming and designing an ice cream flavor with your choice of title. Definitely do not use particles of death. But it's true. It doesn't take very long to fill out the survey, and they don't tell you this, but you could be naming and designing an ice cream flavor. So take time between now and next Friday, and we can sure use 37% student response. That's an amazing statistic. Chemical physics. This is like a physics round. Physics in a short period of time. Raquel, Gama, Lima, Costa is going to teach us about something wonderful, and I love the title of her presentation. How do proteins dance. Ooh la la, bring it on.
Hello, my name is Raquel, and I'd like to invite you to dive into the world of proteins and how protein dance. Let's start with, what are proteins? When I say protein, some people think about whey protein for muscle growth. Well, that's one type of protein that we don't naturally have, and that's why people take it. However, our body produces thousands of different proteins to keep us alive. In their core, they are made of atoms that form the structures that determine their functions. If they malfunction, we can get severe diseases like cancers, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Therefore, understanding how they work is really important to development treatments and understanding these conditions. I like to think of proteins like dancers. Imagine astronauts freely dancing through space. Their moves, and in proteins I'll say their shapes, are really important for proteins' functions. Now, if the protein doesn't move well, it's going to be bad for you if you don't understand it. However, traditional methods only look at a single shape of the protein, like looking through a keyhole and only seeing one shape. That's where my research comes in, to break open the door and reveal all the shapes there. I studied this computational technique called reweighting methods. These methods tell you the protein shapes. For example, in the case of the astronaut, imagine that the astronaut, this research will tell you that they are 40% of the time in a closed dance move, and 60% of the time freestyle dancing. Now, with proteins, that was a little bit different, but it's the same idea. These methods work with two principles, one called maximal entropy and one called maximal parsimony. Maximal entropy will tell you, let's embrace uncertainty and look at all the shapes. That might be too much information and it's hard to understand. Now, maximal parsimony will look at the simplest explanation with the fewest amount of shapes possible, which might be too little information. So my research combined these two things to give you the most important shapes. Now, we already got some results with that. We applied that to a protein called ubiquitin that we all have in our bodies. So ubiquitin, whenever our body wants to get rid of a protein, ubiquitin comes and marks that protein to be thrown out. If that doesn't work well, we'll get an accumulation of unwanted protein and we'll get sick. With this research, I was able to fully characterize the two main shapes that ubiquitin has. Now we can forward that to other scientists that we use the research to develop treatments in case that doesn't work well. Well, I hope I was able to convince you that proteins may be tiny, but they have enormous impact. Thank you for listening, and until next time.
I love the way now our new phrase is reweighting methods. When you're dancing by yourself, by the mirror, you can say, I'm reweighting methods. And learning how to dance differently because my protein is all messed up. Wow. Do you feel smart? Yes. Yeah, some of you came in smart. The rest of us are walking out with everything you've given us. So thank you so very much. Nick Schwartz is up next. Nick joins us from Material Science and Engineering, that hard competition, and is going to talk to us today about fusion revolution, the centrifugal mirror. So we've had dancing, and now we've got the mirrors. Boom! They go together. Hang on one second.
Okay, no problem. Okay. We are hungry for energy. Experts predict an up to 2 times increase in global energy demands over the next 30 years. And for the past few decades, we've been feeding Earth some pretty unhealthy food, which has made it all hot and gassy. One thing I love just as much as my research is cooking, so perhaps I can explain my work through a culinary lens. So, our planet has a clear need for cheap, green electricity. That's where my research into fusion energy comes in. It's green food with all kinds of benefits. There's no greenhouse gas emissions, and it doesn't matter whether the sun is shining, the wind is blowing, or water is flowing. Fusion can be anywhere, anytime. The fuel is practically limitless, and unlike fission energy, there's almost no radioactive waste. To make fusion, we need an ingredients list and a recipe. And the ingredients are simple. It's just hydrogen gas. We first ionize our gas into a plasma, which is basically just a soup of ions and electrons. We can then heat our soup up to 100 million degrees Celsius, because nobody likes a cold soup, and confine or contain it in a bowl. Inside our bowl of soup, ions crash into each other and fuse, releasing a lot of energy, something that's even predicted by Einstein's E = mc squared. Finally, we've made fusion. Now, there are dozens of approaches people have tried to make fusion work, but none have won the title of Star Baker just yet. One of the biggest obstacles has been confining the soup in its bowl. My research focuses on one often overlooked approach, the centrifugal mirror. This simple concept combines a strong electric and magnetic field to rotate particles faster than the speed of sound, which leads to all kinds of benefits, including better confinement. In fact, my team and I have built a 20-foot-long fusion reactor to prove those benefits, and it's already working just like we predicted. Moving forward, one of the biggest challenges is that this device requires an electrically insulating material that can withstand heat flux higher than that on the surface of the sun and particle bombardment that can rip apart steel. I've chosen and have been testing a material called hexagonal boron nitride to determine whether it can survive in this harsh environment. My modeling predicts that it has good resistance to both heat and particle damage. Next, I'm going to put samples of this material into our reactor and characterize changes to the material. If I'm successful, that puts us one step closer to feeding our planet that healthy, green fusion food. Thank you.
You know, I love the way you can make science into culinary wisdom, right? And my favorite phrase, we made the earth all hot and gassy. And then we learned about fusion soup. Don't make it at home tonight because it won't fit in any of your bowls. It'll melt down. But holy cow, we are wiser for you. Li Feng is here from Nutrition and Food Science, which is a good follow-on to the culinary stuff that was just in Nick's presentation. And Feng is going to talk a little bit about how managing heart health could slow down brain aging. Oh, Lord, we need you. Come on, bring it on.
Alzheimer's disease is one of the most challenging forms of dementia we face today, still without any effective treatments. However, studies have shown that up to 40% dementias could be prevented by proactively managing the modifiable risk factors, particularly those associated with the heart health. In my dissertation, I delved deep into the potential of life's essential aid to slow down the brain aging. In the research, I analyzed the data from the UK Biobank to see how adherence to those 8 essential factors could be a key strategy in preventing the Alzheimer's diseases and other dementias. The Life's Essential 8 is a comprehensive health metric issued in 2022 by American Heart Association. It has 2 categories. One is about the lifestyle, which includes diet, physical activity, non-smoking, and sleep. Another one is about the cardiovascular health, which includes BMI, blood sugar, blood pressure, and the blood lipids. To evaluate the brain health, we leveraged a novel measure known as brain age gap, which is the difference between the biological brain age and the chronological brain age. The biological brain age is estimated by a machine learning algorithm from the brain imaging data. Our study has several impactful findings. First, we find out that for those who closely followed all aspects of the essential factors, their brains on average are 490 days younger than those with poor health status. And the joint effect is way greater than any single factor. This striking result emphasizes the importance of a holistic health approach. More than this, gender and genetic differences also emerged. Men usually showed older brain ages than women, and the postmenopausal woman with hypertension, or those carrying 1 or 2 ApoE4 genes, particularly with poor health status, had an elevated risk of accelerated brain aging. The implications of our study are profound, that not only reinforce the importance of the holistic approach to health maintenance, but also highlight the necessity of personalized care. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Lee. My notes are getting wilder, right? Because you had those 8, but if you also thought about the nettle plant in all of that, maybe that would also positively impact brain health. So I'm like, oh my God, we got to write this down. You have 400 days. You know, like they're younger by 400 days, which is a year. Keep going. We need your research. We need it fast. Emily Cygrymus is joining us today from Counseling Psychology. We are so grateful. And what Emily is going to talk about today is coping with weight stigma at work. And we're so grateful you're talking about that important topic too. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Lazy, sloppy, lacking self-discipline. These are stereotypes that we associate with people in larger bodies, or fat people. They also happen to be attributes that we associate with undesirable workers. We know that these negative beliefs about fatness can be detrimental to how these workers are viewed and treated at work. Workers in larger bodies are often perceived by their employers and colleagues to have less leadership potential, to be less intelligent, and to be less qualified than their thinner colleagues. These biases have been found to relate to negative outcomes in hiring, performance evaluations, salaries, and more for people in larger bodies. We know that there has been little research on how fat workers cope with weight stigma at work. Things like receiving hurtful comments from your coworker about your weight, being looked over for promotions, or being unable to access office chairs or uniforms in one size. I was specifically interested in the idea of body acceptance coping strategies, things like advocating for yourself, positive self-talk, and support seeking, efforts aligned with accepting one's body identity rather than trying to blame or change oneself. In a sample of over 600 workers in larger bodies who had recently experienced weight stigma, I created and tested measures of body acceptance coping behaviors, which are engagement in coping strategies, and coping self-efficacy, how confident you feel in using these strategies. I looked at how coping and other factors, like a sense of support from your organization, related to workplace success, commitment, engagement, and satisfaction with one's coping efforts. I found that having confidence in your ability to engage in coping behaviors and actually using them in response to weight stigma predicted workplace outcomes. Both were related to a sense of success in one's career, but also important, one sense of support from their organizations. Those who perceived their organizations to be more supportive had a greater sense of success in their careers, were more committed to their organizations, and were more engaged at work. Body size often gets erased when we talk about identity, especially in the context of work. In identifying the importance of coping and of workplace support, I hope that my research can inform training and intervention to help people cope with weight stigma and to help workplaces increase support in service of fostering more fulfilling careers for people in larger bodies. Thank you.
Talking about body acceptance both individually and organizationally, which is, I think, a beautiful thing to think about. Future managers and future family members. We are grateful today to have another person from the great field of physics joining us. Twesh is going to talk to us about a really great topic. And I love your title. Can a quantum Humpty Dumpty put himself back together again? Bring it on. Talk about Humpty Dumpty.
The arrow of time is the familiar idea that time only proceeds in one direction. For example, air freshener diffuses throughout a room but doesn't collect back in the bottle. Studying the arrow of time is a central research program in physics. One way physicists study the arrow of time is through changes in entropy. Entropy is a way to quantify how disordered or randomized a system is. The second law of thermodynamics posits that as time marches forward, the entropy of a system never decreases, unless, say, there is some work done on the system. For example, suppose I showed you a video of an egg breaking. The scattered eggshells have a higher entropy than the whole egg does because they can be arranged in so many more ways than the whole egg can. So there would be nothing surprising about the egg having moved from a state of low to high entropy in accordance with the second law. On the other hand, if I showed you a video of an egg putting itself back together, that would be surprising. You might conclude that either I was showing you a video played in reverse, or that there was someone outside the frame of the video doing work to put the egg back together. Classical systems like the egg are well understood. My research focuses on the relatively unexplored thermodynamics of quantum systems. Quantum mechanics describes the behavior of tiny objects, like atoms. Atoms can behave in ways that are very different from what we usually observe. When you or I come to a double doorway, we pass through either the left or right door at a time. But when an atom comes to a barrier with a left and right gap, it can actually pass through both at the same time. We then say the atom is in a superposition of different states. My collaborators and I show that due to quantum effects like superposition, the very definition of entropy needs to be revisited. We prove that 3 formulas for the entropy change, which are normally equal to each other, can become unequal due to quantum effects. Each formula uncovering a different physical insight. For example, we show that when 2 quantum systems, say a hot and a cold atom, start off in a state of superposition, once they interact, their entropy can actually decrease. This surprising result is due entirely to quantum mechanics. To connect this back to the second law, it suggests that quantum superposition can act as a source of work to simulate reversing time's arrow. Practically, this may have applications to make future quantum devices run more efficiently, because reducing entropy is kind of like reducing friction. For example, small nanoscale motors for targeted drug delivery. In short, a quantum Humpty Dumpty can seemingly put himself back together. Thank you.
Entropy and Humpty Dumpty. Word you won't forget today, will you? It's great. What I love about each of our presentations today is you can imagine that folks who are bemoaning whatever it is they're trying to learn in the classroom would suddenly say, I get it. You also might want to do the Humpty Dumpty dance. But it would be great if you did. Shreya is our next presenter. Representing bioengineering, the title of Shreya's presentation is a great one too. Skin in the game. Micropatches to stop autoimmune disease, and we're grateful to have you here, Shreya.
Our immune systems are like guard dogs. Just like a guard dog that protects us against threats, our immune system protects us against foreign pathogens. But sometimes, the same guard dog does not recognize the difference between a friend and a foe and can bite you. This analogy perfectly encapsulates autoimmune diseases where our own immune cells attack our own tissues, leading to a range of symptoms including vision impairment, loss of motor control, and sometimes even paralysis. Globally, an estimated 200 million people suffer from at least one of the 100 autoimmune diseases, including multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and type 1 diabetes. Unfortunately, these diseases lack cures. And even the existing treatments leaves patients susceptible to the diseases and require lifelong treatment management. This is where my project steps in.
I propose an innovative approach to treat autoimmune diseases by using specialized materials to target the skin. Why the skin, you might ask? Well, think about it. Our skin is constantly exposed to thousands of germs, chemicals, pathogens, dust, and whatnot. Yet, we do not always fall ill, right? This is because the skin has a unique property to regulate its immune responses. It protects us from germs and pathogens, but unlike an untrained guard dog, it also knows not to overreact to self or harmless things. We can utilize this specific property of the skin, which is to regulate its immune responses to treat autoimmune diseases. Moreover, the skin has a high concentration of immune cells that we can target and train to achieve the desired controlled immune response. In our lab, we have developed specialized materials called microneedles to target the skin. These microneedles are tiny micron-sized needles that can be self-applied just like a normal band-aid to efficiently deliver cargo to the skin. Seeing that we need to tackle hundreds of autoimmune diseases, thus far we have shown that we can load these microneedles with different types of immunotherapeutic cargo, providing a versatile platform for treating different autoimmune diseases. Moreover, our microneedles are made from materials that protect the cargo from harsh environmental conditions, which enable sustainable distribution of the treatment without the need of costly cold chains. This increases the accessibility of the treatment. Furthermore, we have shown that by targeting and training immune cells in the skin using these cargo-loaded microneedles leads to decreased levels of paralysis in preclinical models of autoimmune disease. Thus, with this project, by literally getting our skin in the game, we are tackling autoimmune diseases one tiny patch at a time. Thank you.
Shreya is the daughter of someone who had MS for almost 45 years.
It's actually
something there, my friend. We're at the end almost. The last person we were just talking about. You're the last. You got to bring the runs in. It has been a joy to have you here and to have you supporting whoever your researcher is that you love or that you want to learn from, and also to the graduate school and for the bringing us all together, because I'm not kidding you, we all go away much brighter but also inspired about the scholars and the research that you're doing and how you're going to change our world. You've got skin in the game and we know what it is too. In school psychology, they are very glad to have Mosnim Habewala, who is one of their scholars who's learning about parent mental health, a critical issue. In her case, parent mental health in India during COVID-19 pandemic, insights and implications. And if you figure this out, bring it to college campuses as well. Thank you.
Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, parents of young children have experienced significant stress. Indeed, several studies have demonstrated the negative effects of the pandemic on parent mental health. However, most work comes from quantitative survey findings. This prevents us from obtaining a deeper and nuanced understanding of factors that may have impacted parent mental health during this time. Also, there is very little work on the topic among families in India. Did you know that according to the World Health Organization, India was the 6th most depressed country in the world in 2018? That's not it. Only 10 to 12% of people with mental health issues in India actually seek services. So this was a vulnerable population to start with, and the pandemic may have made things just worse. So for my dissertation, I conducted a mixed methods longitudinal study to examine factors impacting parent mental health in India during the pandemic. And you may ask, why do I care about parents in India? Well, mental health costs add significantly to economic burden. And in today's day and age of globalization, mental health has far-reaching effects across boundaries. So for my study, I recruited 140 parents who had children between the ages of 4 and 8. 3 main findings emerged from my study. First, parents' mental health was definitely impacted due to the pandemic. And parents in India, like parents in other parts of the world, also experience mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and stress. However, there were unique cultural variables impacting parent mental health. For instance, intergenerational family households and the dynamics that come with intergenerational families, as well as gender role expectations and gender role pressures impacted specific mental health challenges. Second, there is still a big lack of awareness about mental health issues in India, and there is still a lot of stigma attached to mental health issues in India. Both of these can be barriers to seeking help, and so they should be addressed. One way of doing so may be in the form of offering workshops or trainings because they may be perceived as less threatening and non-stigmatizing as compared to something like individual therapy. And third, parent mental health seemed to impact the way in which they interacted with their children, which in turn seemed to impact child mental health. So collectively, these findings suggest that within therapeutic settings, it's very important to consider these unique cultural variables and contextual factors. My findings also speak to the larger need of having macro-level supports and policies in place that support parent mental health during stressful times like these. In conclusion, my study addressed an important issue related to the global mental health crisis brought about by the pandemic. Thank you very much.
I totally appreciated this because I think about mental health, right, and how impacted it was across the globe as a result of the pandemic, and particularly parents who had a lot of mantles that they had to put on as they took care of children and themselves and try not to be infected. We come to the end of our time. Can we give a big shout out to Robin, who made the whole thing happen? A big shout out to our judges back there who have the really amazing presentations. You've come to a fewer than all of them. For all of you who took the time to do this, the gift of time and scholarship and wisdom that you shared with all of us will have a lasting impact on us. We will all be talking your words in the coming days, and it'll be great, like, thanks to you, but you also inspire other scholars to believe they could do it too. And so thank you for doing that, because I think that makes us just a better educational institution. The final thought is, I know people like dates, right? So don't forget that the announcement of the winners of this contest, without formal order, is going up on Friday, April 19th, which is this Friday. And you can find that on the grad school site. But you can also find the live stream / recorded pieces if you want to go back and learn what all my notes mean. It's good stuff. And go get your medals, and then we'll all be happier for it. Thank you so very much, friends, for being here. Steve, Robin, anything you want to share? There's more ice cream. There is more ice cream. There are no particles of death in there, damn it. They're like, you can put it on your skin. It's going right through. Like, right through.